Now, I don't know how you are. I don't know what your personality is like necessarily. For me, I'm always looking forward to what's coming up next, what's on the calendar, what do I need to get done, what do we have going on with the family. And if I do look back, it's usually to evaluate what just happened and figure out what was wrong and what I need to change and fix for the future, right? I'm a very forward-looking person. So for me, it is incredibly necessary to stop and look back with an eye to celebrate and to celebrate what has gone well in the last season. So a few things that I know that I want to celebrate, and you can have some additional things at the end if you want, but a few things that I want to celebrate are the fact that we have coaches for our life group leaders right now. Now, what that means is there's a whole lot more of you than there is of me. And as Pastor Foster was teaching about today, relationships matter, right? We all need those tight relationships that are involved in our lives, but we can only have a certain number of really close relationships. And so I have asked a few incredibly skilled people who are super awesome, if they would help me lead you. So they are coaches, and that title is really on purpose. Because if you think about the role of a coach, it's somebody who's there to equip, to inspire, to train. They are your biggest cheerleader. They're going to be pushing you on. They're going to be celebrating things with you. So the coaches, they're all here today. We have Melissa Belay right over here. Over here we have Verl Taylor, and where's Jack? Jack Parrott right there in the back. If you got an email from me this morning, check your emails if you don't normally do that. If you got an email from me this morning, I introduced you to who your coach would be, gave you contact information and said, hey, meet up with this person. Before you go tonight, make sure that you've swapped contact information, gotten time face-to-face. I want you to understand, these people are experienced as leaders. They're experienced as life group leaders. They know what they're talking about, and they've also just lived a lot of life. So they're there to help you. Now, they're not coming in as experts to tell you what to do. Their role is not that they're going to come in and direct you. They're going to come in and support you. They're going to come in and answer questions. They're going to be there to pray for you on a regular basis. And I've asked them to make the effort in their life and in their schedule to try to carve out time for face-to-face, sit down for coffee with you guys as well. So when they reach out, I want to ask you, please treat them the same respect. Carve a little time into your schedule to sit down with them and learn from them. If they, as they're reaching out, please know they're reaching out on my behalf. This is shared leadership, and it goes a whole lot farther than what I could do one-on-one with you guys. And so we're kind of sharing the load. Now, if you did not get an email from me this morning introducing you to your new coach, it means you're stuck with me. All right. Another thing that I think is a celebration, and I mentioned this right before we prayed, that monthly survey. You guys have been awesome about submitting your answers to that. Now, my wallet right now is full of receipts that at the bottom promise me that I will win $1,000 if I fill out a survey. We all see those and we all throw those away, right? Those surveys are invaluable to me, though, as a leader. I have chosen to be very narrow and focused on the questions that I ask. They're always things that are actionable for the ministry as a whole, and they're things that give me better insight into you, your group, and what's happening for you as a leader. And so I really appreciate you taking the 3 or 4 minutes each month to give your feedback on those. The topics that we talk about tonight are coming directly out of your responses. So like I said, this is all very actionable stuff. So to me, that's another thing that I celebrate. And along with that, attendance. You guys, now, if you were here at our last quarterly huddle back in October, I reminded you that you guys are our church's primary support network. Life groups are how we know people are growing. Life groups are how we know people are invested and involved and engaged. So when you guys are taking attendance, it makes a really big difference. You're not doing some little bit of record keeping for us so that we can get to the end of the year and pat ourselves on the back and say, wow, look how we've grown. That is not what we're at all. Instead, when we have crisis that happens, when somebody calls the church and says, hey, this person in our congregation suddenly passed away. First thing that we do after we've hung up the phone with them is we look to see whose life group are they in. We want to know, because if there's a crisis moment, if there's a situation that's going on, you already know their story. You can just dive right in and helping out with what's going on. It's so much further having you guys ready to go on the front lines than having to go and catch me up on the situation. So then we can figure out what needs to be done. So you guys taking attendance goes a long way. Our goal as a church, we want to see people know and follow Jesus. That doesn't mean numbers. That means engagement. We measure that by engagement. Looking at who's involved in a life group, who's involved in a learning group, who is on a serving team, who's being mentored. Those are the sort of things that we use to measure engagement which is an evidence of the spiritual growth. So thank you again. I want to celebrate all of you guys who have been taking your attendance. It has been awesome. And I'm starting now, as we get more and more weeks of this data, I'm starting to kind of see the image come in. It's kind of like back in the dial-up internet days when you'd get the basic image, but it was all blurry. And then over time, it would get a little bit more detailed. That's kind of what's happening to me right now. In addition, I love hearing the stories of what's going so well for you guys in your groups. When I hear about lives changed, when I hear about people praying for their families, when I hear about new relationships, people who are new to the area, finding a community, a place to belong, that is so exciting. So I want to say thank you. I celebrate that for you guys. Another thing that we should celebrate is new life. I mentioned that Kurt and Becky Henderson are not here tonight, but they are due to have a new baby in March. And in addition, right here we've got Ben and Chelsea Moore. You guys are having a baby in March. So I think this is super awesome. You guys this is their first one, so they're headed into that new season, that new transition. Life should always be celebrated. So I celebrate that. The interesting thing to me about groups is just how they sit right in the middle of what a church is about. Sometimes we can fall into, and maybe you've been a part of a church where the accidental situation is that Sunday morning is the center of what the church is about. That gathering and getting people there on a Sunday, that's what's going on, and that's the most important thing. And I'm so grateful that as a church, we have steered away from that over the last decade. We've made some really intentional choices. Our elders and our lead pastors have made some really intentional decisions to move us back away from that model to say, you know what? Groups is going to be the core. Relationships is going to be the core. People interacting with other Christian people is going to be the core of what our church is about. And everything that Pastor Brian just talked about is evidence of that. Us planting a church, you could tell it's personal for Brian, right? It's personal because I completely expect that some of you in this room are going to get tapped on the shoulder by God, and he's going to say, hey, guess what? You ever wanted to move down by Avalon? That's okay. You didn't know that you wanted to, but I'm moving you anyway. Right? God does amazing things like that. And he's going to put some of you or some of your group members into that core team. It's going to happen, and we have to celebrate that. We have to recognize, you know what? It may be a loss for us individually. We may lose some of our best leaders in the church to this. But man, I wouldn't want to send any of my low-level leaders off on a church plan. I only want to send you guys. I only want to send the best people that we have because I want to see it thrive. I want to see it grow. I want to see their church be as healthy and successful at helping people know and follow Jesus as God has helped us to be as a church. Now, we talked today about groups. You heard Pastor Brian talk about it in the announcements part. Foster encouraged everybody, if you're not part of a group, get into a group. I want to help you understand what we mean when we say groups. Because I'll be honest, I've been a part of churches where they only had one kind of group, and I've been part of churches where everything was a group. And as for us, we're kind of in the middle ground of that. We have three kinds of groups. And you'll hear me use these different terminologies. There's a connect group, which is just simply a chance for people to get to know other people in the Christian context. So that would be an example of that would be Primetimers, our senior ministry, or the Belonging, our college ministry, or our ladies' hand sewing group that meets every other Tuesday in this building, actually. You may not have even known that existed. These are people who want to get to know each other. It's either life stage or interest-based. I'm looking forward to working with some of you guys here in this room, actually. We've been talking about having a way for guys to be able to connect. It's not a full life group commitment. It's a little easier, kind of a starting point, a launching point to be able to start getting to know each other, and from there move forward into deeper relationships and further commitment. That further commitment is what we call a learning group. So connect group is kind of the start of the sales funnel. I'm going to just be crass for a minute. It's a sales funnel. We're going to start really broad with that. We're going to move down into our learning groups. Our learning groups is where you have a start date and an end date, and it's topical. It's focused on, hey, we're studying John, or we're studying, how to parent your adult kids, or we're studying whatever. Like, it's got a start and an end date, and you know what you're there for. They're great because they help people to meet other people in a similar interest or a similar life stage. But you're not committing your whole life to this. And so it's a great next step for people. And out of that, we always try to launch them into a life group, which is what you guys lead, where we say, hey, this is where it's really at. This is what life is about. Walking with Christ is meant to be done together. And so we invite people to commit and say, be part of each other's lives for the long haul. Be there for each other, and that's what you guys are leading. So I just want you to understand, when you hear me talk about groups, we have 3 various kinds, and we try to kind of clump things together into connect groups, learning groups, life groups. We do that not to make hard and fast rules, but instead to be able to communicate more clearly. The ultimate goal of all of our groups comes right back to the fact that groups are our church's core ministry. This is how we help people know and follow Jesus, is through groups. So with that in mind, one of the questions that we had out of the last huddle, and that came up again on the survey, is you guys just wish you knew who each other was. And so right on your table, there is a directory. I decided not to put it online right now because personal information should stay private and personal, and stuff online ends up in the public sphere. So I'm working on a safe way for us to be able to share this stuff online for you guys to make it easier, because, man, I keep everything in here. I don't know about you, but this is at least a starting point. I wanted you to be able to know who the other leaders are at the very highest level. If you're wondering why your picture's not in there, you should check your email. Like a little dig. Ooh, okay. That's about as sarcastic as I usually get. My hope is that we can continue to develop this and we can add more things to it. What I would eventually like to see is not only that we have a living directory that's always updated and always up to date with the latest information, but also I think it would be great if that directory also helped you to be able to see what studies other groups are doing. How cool would it be if you could just look through the list and go, oh, they did that study on James? I was thinking about it. Let me call them up and just see how it went. Let me text this person over here and say, hey, how did your group like this thing? Or, oh my gosh, we're about to do the same thing. Why don't we, kind of co-teach and we can loan each other back and forth, stuff like that. That's a down the road kind of plan. We'll work that direction. But I wanted to let you guys know about that. Another question that came up out of the survey was, what are our church's ministry programs, basically? Like, what to do if I have somebody in my group who needs help? And that is such a broad question, obviously. It could be help in a lot of different areas. We do things from people who walk in off the street, Monday through Thursday when the church office is open, who ask for food. We have food that we hand right out to them, but we also try to connect them in with more longer-term support, right? For you guys personally, for a group, I want you to know something. We are not a programs-based church. We're a life group-based church, and that means that you guys are our church's core ministry arm. Have I said it enough times for it to start settling in? That's kind of the theme of tonight. You guys are our church's core ministry. You guys are how we are able to accomplish discipleship. You guys are how we're able to help people know and follow Jesus. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't have any programs, because obviously we do. So some examples would be our South Lake Cares ministry. If you know somebody who is on hard times financially, who's having a hard time with a job situation, they've been going really far, really long time, haven't been able to get work. If you know somebody who's in need of food, or their kids need things, if you know somebody who's in a dangerous relationship and they need help getting to a safe, stable location, we can help with all of that, okay? Call up the church office and just say, here's the situation. Okay, our staff is ready to jump in and help with those things, and that is why we have South Lake Cares. We're not just providing food for kids and seniors. We do a whole lot more beyond that, but we try to keep a lot of it just quiet because it's really personal stories. It's very intense stuff, some of the things that we help out with. I love the fact that we have a case manager now who her whole job is to work one-on-one with these families and help them make changes in their lives that lead them out of the cycles that have been so disastrous for them, and helping them take new steps forward. It is a wonderful thing. So South Lake Cares is big and it's broad. What we talk about, the public part of that we talk about, is how we provide meals for kids with buses and backpacks. So we provide meals for seniors with brown bags for home. But there's more involved in that. So South Lake Cares, just call the church office. We'll connect you with the right people in that larger ministry. Another arm of that we're working to be able to grow and develop is our counseling ministry. You guys probably know that Cesar Perez is our on-staff counselor. He is a fully licensed marriage and family therapist. He is our counseling arm right now. And he has been working to develop other counselors, both certified and lay counselors, to be able to expand that ministry. If you remember back in Vision Day, Pastor Brian said, phase 1 for building is the big warehouse right out here. Phase 2 is expanding the counseling ministry because we need that. We have so many great opportunities. So that's kind of where we're headed with that. But again, if you know somebody who's in crisis or maybe going through some major life changes, or there's some situations that they need counseling, they need help, talk to us. We're ready to help with that. Southlake Cares, that is the counseling arm, is one of the aspects of why we have Southlake Cares. In addition to that, we've got a lot of other smaller ministry teams, like our disaster relief team that comes and helps out. I don't know if you guys realize this or not, but in December, there was a tornado that actually came across through Central Florida. It went over my house. I had people on that team say, hey, do you need help moving trees out of your yard? And I said, no, but can I borrow your chainsaw? They said, sure. So that's the sort of thing. We've got some awesome people on that team who are ready to jump in and help. Now, they are activated by the larger Southern Baptist Disaster Relief Organization, and so there's a leadership hierarchy in there that needs to be followed. So you can't just call up people and say, hey, church, send somebody here, but you can call us up and say, hey, I've got a need, right? I know of somebody who has a situation, and we can get the right people involved to make sure that we're taking care of those. And then a lot of the other serving things that happen are really kind of ad hoc, on the moment, as the need arrives. When there's a funeral, we call up people to help with the funeral, right? We help in the moment as things happen. It's not that we have a ministry for funerals. It's that we know funerals are going to happen, and so we have people who step in. Another thing that happened this same Sunday is a couple of people came to me and said, hey, I've led a Bible study in the past. I'm interested in leading a group now. What does that look like? What do I need to do? And it just instantly triggered several thoughts in my head. One, God is so good to provide the leaders when we need them, because I don't know enough people to be able to figure out who all the leaders are. This has happened to me so many times in ministry where I don't know who all the leaders are going to be, but I know we need more people. And God says, hey, I got this. Trust me. I'll send people to you. When we started our 8:15 service, I run First Impressions as well, right? We started that service and they said, Gabe, the two teams it's going to affect is the worship and tech team and your First Impressions team. Are you okay with that? And I said, yeah, bring it on. Let's do it. We need to get that 8:15 service rolling. And we did. And I had no volunteers for it at the beginning. And then I got people calling me up, and Bob Eamon said, hey, Mary and I could hold the doors. We've done that in the past. Do you need help? And I said, yeah. And all of a sudden I have a whole team of people that rotate, A team and B team, right? Like God is so good to provide those things. He has provided group leaders. But the other thing that popped into my head related to that is a conversation that I had with somebody earlier in the week who was talking about the life groups and their curriculum and how do we, how do we as a church kind of make sure that what you guys are teaching is not just crazy heretical? And I said, well, we give them a lot of leeway. We give you guys a lot of leeway in what you choose to study, because we're not starting with what should be taught. We're starting with who is the leader. We start with knowing you guys. We start with a lot of trust in you. And related to that, there is a document in the middle of your table there. It says, has groups across the top, and it says group leader agreement. And so I want to talk you through this. This is something that we used to have in the past, and then it kind of, I don't know what happened to it, but we didn't have it on anybody's computers on staff. And so I went and rewrote it. And this is something that is really valuable for you to see, for me to be able to talk it over with you. And here's why. This document is talking about what sort of things might disqualify you from the role of a life group leader. And as soon as I bring that up, some of you, based on your church background or your personal experiences, are instantly feeling judged and like this is probably a works-based church. And we're not. So let me just back up and say everything on this document, front and back, is filled with a perspective of grace. That's where we're coming from. When Pastor Brian and Pastor Robert and I sat down and we said, we need to make sure that all of our group leaders understand what the commitment looks like and understand what it's going to mean to be a group leader. And the fact that, yes, we do have requirements. There are certain things that will push you out of being qualified for being a group leader. We need you to know that if those things happen and you are not eligible, our goal is not to push you off to the side. Our goal is restoration. Our goal is to help you heal and to grow. Our goal is to help you to stay in community and stay involved. So I'm not going to read through this because I trust you guys are grown-ups. However, this is something that we are going to go back to. Each year, I'm going to ask you guys to basically recommit and say, are we good? Do you agree to this for this year? Is this something that you are committing to? And I get that verbal thumbs up or down from you. I'm not sure. It's probably an email form. But I'm going to get that from each of you guys, and we can move forward with that. A couple of things that I want to point out. On page 1, spiritual and emotional health, we've been talking about a lot of heavy things. And sometimes there's too much in your life to be able to lead others effectively. And when that happens, I need you to be honest with me about that, to let me into your story or let your coach into your story so that they can understand, wow, this person is already operating at capacity and we're about to ask them something more. We're asking them to do additional. That's not healthy for them because we as a church, we care so much more about who you are than what you do. So your spiritual and emotional health has to come first. And if you're in a situation where you're not able to lead in a healthy way, for whatever reason, I want to see you able to take leadership off of your plate long enough to then have space for healing, space for growth in community. Okay, let me just make sure that is all heard very clearly. In addition, you see that there are some various types of sins listed here. This is not a thorough, comprehensive list. Instead, this is trying to point out and say, hey, these are examples of things that may start as a private sin and suddenly blows up in your face as a public sin. And I would like to prevent you from being in that awkward situation of suddenly being exposed as a hypocrite or having lived a double life. It protects the church as well. You guys are our key ministry arm. What you do is a reflection back onto the church of who we are as a church in this world. And so that's why it's so important to us that we remind you that leaders, according to the Bible, are people who are actively following the life of Christ. It doesn't mean we get it right all the time. It just means that we are consistently turning our lives back over to him and saying, okay, I messed up again. Help me. God, help me. God, I need your grace. And we're surrounding ourselves with people who we can trust, who we can share life with. If you do not have people in your life who you can be honest with, Pastor Foster talked today about how he has 3 people in his life who he specifically knows that he is going to talk with them about sin. They're going to ask him if he doesn't bring it up, right? If you don't have people like that in your life, I want to encourage you and implore you to find those people. And guess what? It's probably not going to be your buddy. It's probably going to be somebody that you respect, but you don't necessarily just want to go hang out with all the time. But somebody who you look at their life and you go, man, I hope my life can get onto that path someday. Those are the people that you want to look for, and those are the people that you want to talk to. If you need some suggestions of who in the church would be a good person to talk to, who would be a good mentor for you as a leader. Well, I've just pointed out 3 of them earlier today. Melissa, Verl, and Jack are coaches. They are excellent mentors and role models, and that's a big part of their role as a coach. But in addition, we are very happy to try to help you connect with other people who are leaders. I can say I've been very fortunate to have people in my life who have pushed me outside of my comfort zone. People who've mentored me, and it has not been fun, but it has been so valuable. Growth happens in those hard times. So I will put this group leader out here, and then I want to let you guys have time to ask questions back. So read it through, call me up, send me a text or an email. Let's sit down and have coffee. If there are things in here that either you disagree with from a philosophical or theological perspective, we need to talk. If there are things in here that you go, you know what, that's me. I'm not sure I qualify for this role right now. That's okay. See, we did the same thing when I was in charge of Southlake Kids, and I had some amazing conversations with the leaders. I had people come to me and say, you know what, Gabe, you've got substance abuse on here, and I've been sober for 3 days. Where does that put me as a leader? And I said, well, you're counting the number of days. That's a good step. Are you in a program? Do you have support? Do you have community? Yeah. got all of that. And then they opened up into this awesome conversation. And now these are people that I get to share life with. It opens up that relationship in such a deeper way to where they were not disqualified from leadership because of their sin. In fact, they are now mentoring other people because of their pursuit of Christ. Okay, so I just want you to know where we're coming from on this. This is not a legalistic document. This is not a legalistic viewpoint. Instead, this is looking at we all need sanctification. And as leaders, we're trusting that you guys are already on that path, that you are actively seeking sanctification with Christ. And that I'm here for you, okay? One of the key things that you probably picked up on out of this, they did what they could with what they had. The relationships that God gave them, they are fostering in the best ways possible. Your group serving may look like your group helping somebody in your group with their medical expenses, right? Your group serving may look like, in fact, Juliet, I asked you earlier if I can bring this up. Her husband, Tom, super nice guy, but just can't get around anymore, right? She leads a life group here on Thursday nights. She needs somebody who would just come and hang out and watch the basketball game on TV with Tom. There's no medical needs that have to be taken care of. It's just kind of hanging out with him. If you guys know of anybody in your group who would be willing to do that, what Julie has is a rotation of people and probably be like once every 6 weeks or so to just come and hang out with Tom so that she can come and lead her group of ladies on a Thursday evening. That's a great way that one of your group members can get onto that list and get involved in serving. But I just encourage you guys, whatever that looks like, hear the commonalities of what you guys have shared today. Prayer is key and relationships are key. Those two things go hand in hand. Prayer fosters good relationships and good relationships foster good prayer for one another. So as we close, I will pray for us. There is so much leftover food. Please take some with you. Our fridge in the office is not big enough and half of us don't eat this stuff anyway because we're supposed to be losing weight. In addition, I wanted to let you know of a couple things that are coming up, again, based off of the survey. Number one, many of you guys said that you wish that you knew how to lead better discussions in your group. So Verl Taylor has agreed to lead a short group for leaders on how to lead lively discussions. So we're going to work on that, and we'll, as soon as the content is fully fleshed out, I'll get a set of dates to you guys on that. Another is I'm pulling together a leadership training cohort. 6 weeks, come early on a Sunday morning, 7:45 on a Sunday morning. I'll have coffee and donuts because we need to help new leaders be trained in. The last thing I want to do is just grab somebody who's willing but not necessarily capable or even understands what we're asking them to do. So if you have people in your group who you think might be a good candidate for leadership down the road, this is a great opportunity. Connect me with them because I don't know who they are until you tell me. I want to bring them into my cohort. And this is something that we'll do on a regular basis if it's successful on this first one. And then guess what? Suddenly you have a co-leader for your group to help support you. Or if you already have co-leaders, guess what? I've got a new group that I can start. Let's pray. God, thank you so much for the way that you have brought these leaders together. I ask for your blessing over their time. As we've taken this time and we've stopped and we've shared, I ask, Holy Spirit, that whatever is valuable would stick with us, and whatever doesn't apply to our situation, you would just remove out of our heads so that we can have a mind of peace that is fixed on you. I ask for those who are headed to their group right now that you would give them enough mental and emotional energy to lead their group well. And for those who are meeting this week, that you would give them time to prepare for their group ahead. God, we turn all of this over to you because ultimately this is not about groups. This is not about discussions. This is about your kingdom. And we know your kingdom is eternal. We trust you, Jesus, and we love you in all things. Amen. Thank you, guys.